In this episode, we are going to be reviewing Swept Away from 1974. This was written and directed by Lina Wertmuller, and it starred Giancarlo Giannini and Mariangela Melato. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a video podcast where we explore movies from all over the world and talk about how those stories were told on film. I want to welcome my guest today is Mike Steiner, who is a Toronto-based actor. Mike, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I know that we've touched on different movies over the years since we've been talking on social media, and this is one that you said you have a real love for. So what was your initial impression of this film when you first saw it?
Well, it came out when I was 16 and it was restricted.
Right.
But it came onto TV when I was 18 and I watched it with with two other roommates. And normally we wouldn't watch a subtitled film, but there was only 5 channels in those days, and that's all that was on. And I can't really say that any film ever has impacted me unexpectedly, like Swept Away. And that's what prompted my strong response to you posting it.
What is it about the film? Is there something specifically about what it's about that you felt so strongly about?
Yeah, I think it's a film. It's an important film. And I think it's a film that had to be made. And I also think it's a perfect story, probably a perfect screenplay. You've got Giancarlo Giannini, Mariangela Melato. You've got a supreme cast. And of course, Lina Wertmuller. I think she plays the biggest part because it was just told in a very impactful way. And with just 2 actors for the most part, it can really go bad. And it didn't. I believe it's flawless.
Just in case some people haven't seen this, I just gave a brief synopsis. It's a trip into the Mediterranean Sea becomes a trip into the discovery of how society's frameworks of the rich and poor are delicate and temporary. What do you think? I mean, this film has so much in it. You know, it's got the divide between the rich and the poor. It's got the battle of the sexes. It's politics. There's commedia dell'arte, social consciousness. It's such a trip. What do you think from your opinion is it, essentially about?
I think it's about what everybody has thought about. Oh, what would happen if we were on a desert island? Oh, you rich person, you would need me if we were alone on a desert island, and all this stuff.
Right.
It's all an illusion,
Yes, it certainly is a fantasy, like a lived fantasy in a lot of ways.
Yes. And I think the beauty is that, like a good movie, I talked to so many women afterwards, and they all didn't know who she would choose, up to a point. And many, I remember clearly talking to said, why did she choose him? She went the wrong way.
You mean at the end with her husband, or do you mean?
Yes.
That's interesting.
If we can do spoilers.
No, for sure.
Many women said, why didn't she take Giancarlo?
Right.
Or, sorry, as his name was, Senor Caronco, or
Coronchio, I believe.
Anyways, I have to keep going back to Lina because the cinematography, there isn't enough I can say about this film. It was filmed in Sardinia, but right now I can see him holding that big lobster. And her crawling across the rocks and seeing that.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
starving, and he's in the most beautiful part of the world, and it's just a beautiful. The whole movie is beautiful.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. No, it's so breathtaking. You know what I find so fascinating about it is that you know, you're right in the sense that it's, you know, people can have so many wildly different opinions about this film because she's not necessarily telling you which way to lean or who to side with. There's really no quote unquote protagonist or antagonist. They're really both antagonists in a way because on the way to the island, you know, before they get to this desert island, I'm kind of more on his side in a sense because she's such a pain in the ass. I mean, she's from off the top, she is so awful. You see the divide between the north and the south of Italy, which is still something that is very true, and especially, you know, 1970s Italy. And you know, she constantly makes fun of the fact that he's a southerner, that he's poor, that they should, you know, that yeah, that he stinks, that she makes him change his shirt, and you see how much it's driving him insane. And she has very strong right-wing views, and he's got very strong left-wing views. And it, you know, you're more on his side because she's totally unfair to him and treats him like absolute dirt. She blames him for the fact that the motor broke, even though it was her, even though he warned her, you know, let's not, the weather is getting bad, this is not safe. And you know, she's just so self-righteous. She's so spoiled, and everything is always, she feels that she's right about everything. And then we have this really interesting change all of a sudden where she is now the one who sort of takes his, the power play changes, and she's had all the power and now he has all the power on this desert island because he's a sailor, he knows how to survive, and she doesn't. And he tortures her, you know, he abuses her, he hits her. And you're, as the audience, you're like, oh God, where do I go from here? Who do I side with? Who do I root for? And it really provokes the audience in such a way. Was that your experience when you were watching it? You're just
I believe, as an overview, she was such a villain at the beginning.
Yes.
That it she was a wonderful villain, and I think what makes a movie is a good villain. This, any type of a movie, if you're going to play a villain, make it horrible. And that allowed him, when they got to the island, to not go over the top no matter what he did. He made her kiss his hand, call him Senor Carrancio or whatever.
Yeah, master.
Master, and all this, where, you know, you're just sort of rooting for him at this point because they're, you know, you understand, the viewer understands.
Yeah, where he's coming from.
You know, from villain to victim, she goes.
Exactly.
And from victim to villain, he goes.
Exactly.
I believe it could have been very easy to go over the top for Giancarlo Giannini, and I came later in life to appreciate how skilled of an actor he truly is.
He's incredible.
But the second time I saw it, like he's the Italian Heath Ledger.
That's an interesting comparison. I know he's so,
you know, like top of his game. That's all I can say.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, you know, both of them can just go to these emotional places. I recently saw, I don't know if you saw the documentary on Lina Wertmuller called Behind the White Glasses. And there's when they interview him, it's just, even as he speaks, he's so passionate. He's got so much life, so much emotion, and the parts that he played in her movies, these are the kind of, you needed people who can reach those kind of levels. And the films are so alive, there's so much life, and right off the top they start with these arguments, and it just goes. I mean, it's so, there's no room to breathe in this movie. I mean, there's no, I suppose at a certain point when they kind of come together, at a certain point you can kind of you can enjoy the purity of a place that they get to. But a lot of the time, it is just a no holds barred. The power dynamics, shifting power dynamics between the rich and the poor, and men and women, and it packs with so many punches. It's really incredible. What's interesting off the top is that even though I was largely kind of seeing him as the protagonist, he was at the same time highly flawed from the beginning of the film. I mean, he has these misogynistic views when he sees her as the one gambling at night and her husband going to bed, and he's like, look what women do to men, they the women do this, and he's and you get the impression that because he's been poor all his life, the only power he had was at home, perhaps, and that he was treating his wife, and you see when he was with what he was like with his wife at the end, because she was making such a commotion out of the fact that she found him and that he was alive, and he's telling her to be quiet. She's making too much of a scene, and he's quite awful. I mean, I felt that the fact that he started to hit her so much and abuse her and sexually assault her and almost rape her, and he even every time he hits her, he says, oh, this is for not paying taxes, this is for that, and it's for all these things. All these things in his life just are coming out and hitting this woman, and then you see her kind of go towards him and embrace him a little later. I mean, why do you think she suddenly changed and went falls for this guy? I mean, where do you think that shift comes from?
I don't see it that way exactly. I see it as far as the love and all this, that ultimately, spoiler alert,
that's fine,
he becomes the victim. Because yes, he beats her around. Yes, he sexually assaults her, so forth and so on. But as I think it's Elvin Bishop did the song, I fooled around and fell in love. He fell deeply in love by accident, perhaps. That's how it was filmed. That's how I read it, and was punished at the very end.
As he said, he tested her by going back to land to see if she really loved him, and what would it be like when we're outside of this island? This is all like, there's no one here. We're living a fantasy. And he's obviously didn't trust her completely out of some kind of insecurity or because of where he was from or where she was from. And obviously, either she couldn't tell her husband what happened, or her family, or how could, maybe from her point of view, she couldn't say that she was with someone quote unquote poor or someone from the South, or she just couldn't give up all those those worldly possessions that she had her entire life. I think
how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I see it as she couldn't give up her worldly possessions.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she would have gone the other way.
Well, what's so interesting about it, something I didn't notice, because I watched it a second time, because I watched it again with my wife last night, and again, she had different opinions than me, and so that's what the beauty of this film. And one thing that really struck me was how much just either having money or not having money really molds us, and it molded them to who they were. The lack of money molded him to be the way he was, as very, very angry. And in her case, it molded her into being a huge snob and self-righteous person, and abusive towards, people on the boat, and treating people like crap. And then as a result of having no money and just surviving on that island, I think there's that point, even when it becomes abusive and they begin to embrace each other. There's a really interesting shot all of a sudden, like a bird's eye shot, where the camera goes up and they're just sitting there hugging. And it's like rebirth to me. It's like they died and now they're born again to a place of purity where money doesn't exist. The society does, and they're living more or less like animals and just surviving and just being with each other. And if you notice, even their faces change. There's no longer that anger on their face or the coldness in her eyes. I mean, it's just everything is so soft. Was that your impression?
Absolutely, yeah, well put. I think that all those things you're talking about, class structure and all this, it's all an illusion that we either buy into
exactly.
or we
exactly.
don't. And when it's always a fantasy that it would disappear, and I believe Swept Away allows it to disappear.
Yes, no, well said.
For a while.
Yeah, exactly. Until they go back to Earth and they become, quote unquote, diluted again by these class structures that still unfortunately exist. When it's interesting when he's abusing her and he says, he's like, I'm not gonna just sleep with you. I want you to fall in love with me and to be passionate about me and to again, it's all power. He's putting all of as much power Absolutely. As he can over her. And what's interesting is you see this change in her, and at first it's I even looked over at my wife's face when she begins to kiss his feet, like, what the hell is she doing? But I felt that perhaps the reason it became, and it is very, very sexy, but yet very dark at the same time, because I felt that the reason that she was so aroused by him was because she had everything her whole life, and to now be sort of dominated and controlled was arousing for her. I mean, as dark and disturbing as that may sound, you see that she even said she didn't even love her husband, that she had never been in love with anyone, and this was like this incredible sex that she was having, a sort of S&M like. I felt that she really was in a just dark and disturbing way. They were both getting off on this, on the way he was being with her. Everything that happened with them sexually and in terms of the violence and the swearing and all that, I think that was like, when they get on that island, so obviously things from their life the fragments of all that are pouring into their relationship. And it's almost as if they had to just get through all of that. They had to I really saw that as symbolic of just murdering each other, like these fights, the sex, it's like one big sort of either murder suicide, and they go to the other side, as she puts it, we're reborn. They get it all out of their system, and they come to a place of just pure, because even when they come together, he still hits her every now and then, and she's aroused by it, and you're thinking, what is going on here? But then it begins to become clearer towards me, because as I said, that goes away. And that bird's eye view, I just thought the fact that she held on them hugging, and it's so sweet, it's so innocent, it's so pure. And it's just, that's all gone. And now we're just here until, of course, they go back. Was that your impression?
That scene gives me goosebumps right now, just hearing you talk about it.
Yeah.
Them hugging. And I think the biggest part of this is Lina Wertmuller. I mean, you can have the best story and the best actors and really screw it up. I don't have to mention any other films, but I think the story was handled in such a way that women and men could love it and hate it.
Exactly.
And could love and hate both of them.
I wanted to ask your opinion. At the end, her husband gives him, $1 million lire, and he's offended, and he goes out and buys a ring. Why do you think, when they're talking about let's just be together with nothing, why do you think he went to buy this ring? What do you think that was about?
I believe that's just a statement. The way Lina Wertmuller would do it, it's just a statement that that's how much he loved her.
Like he would give it to her just as a symbol, you mean?
No, I think he would marry her, which meant a lot more when that movie was released.
Oh, right.
I think it was just to display how deep was his love. It's just an expression of how deep he fell in love, and that makes him, because if it was anything else, he wouldn't be the final victim of the movie, which is what Lina Wertmuller wanted.
Yeah.
Like, because ultimately his acting toward at the end there, like, I mean, everything's just spot on.
When I first saw it, I thought, she was saying something in terms of right versus left politics, but I didn't now when I watched it again, I really didn't think so. I think it was just more about how class division and what money does to people. I don't think it was anything that, I know they talk politics, but I don't think it had anything more to do with some kind of a statement on politics. I mean, what do you think?
It's whatever. Yeah, I agree. I think it's all about class structure and what an illusion it is.
Right.
So I believe that it was showing when the class structure is removed.
Yes.
And all these illusions and things are removed. And then there's a bigger statement or a question. Why did she go back to it?
Right. Exactly.
That I find women ask more than men.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I always say, but he beat her. And they never quite respond to that because they've already said I would go back to the island with him.
I know, which is so interesting to see a man do that, but yet you continue to root for them, and I suppose it's because, as we've said, it's not black and white. I mean, you understand why he does that, not that you agree with it, and then you understand why she would lean towards him as a result of these abusive fights, which then turn erotic, and they go through all these ups and downs and and these insane journeys. I felt perhaps he perhaps got through to her to an extent, in terms of she had to suddenly live the way he had lived his whole life, so she had finally gained some kind of empathy for what someone who is poor has to go through. You see when she wants the lobster, and he's like, no, I'm not giving you the lobster, and your money's not good here, and she even says, you're gonna make me starve to death, and he laughs like, oh, what do you think? What do you think the rich people have done to me my whole life, and things like that. I felt that perhaps you see her sitting there alone after this, these fights and hitting her, and I think she gained some kind of understanding of something outside of what she had experienced. Was that your impression?
Yes, I believe that she definitely learned a lot, and that would even be more pronounced if she chose him. But
yes,
I think
exactly.
I think she got her feet wet, and
right.
she became a better person as a result of it by the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how I see it. It's a fantasy of power struggle. It's just a fantasy film. And I had a question for you.
Yes.
Before we did this, was, can you name a film that's similar to that, besides, of course, the remake?
No.
Can I say Goodfellas is similar to Casino? I can say that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so and if you gave me any film, I could probably come up with another film that's similar. And I believe Swept Away was just Lina Wertmuller with a magic script and
absolutely. Yeah,
everything worked.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there are movies about the battle of the sexes and the rich and the poor, but not like this. Not like this.
It was made back then for $83,000.
I didn't even know that. Wow,
that's a lot. Well, it's on IMDb. And by the way, also, if you look up Lina Wertmuller, she has 5 names. So it's Lina's not her real name. Wertmuller's her last name, and there's 5 Italian names.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Look it up.
Yeah.
You'll see.
I'll have to look it up. The only other scene that I was gonna ask you about, of course, was when they're on the beach, and then she suddenly says, asks him to do perform sodomy on her, and he doesn't know what that means, and he starts to think that maybe she's trying to mess with him or make him feel stupid. What did you think that scene was about? Was that another power dynamic? I don't know. I just thought it was funny.
No, I don't think she was trying to make him feel stupid. I believe it was hysterical of Lina to make him have a goofy look into the camera, you know, sort of like a cat that doesn't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you that I watched it. I remember I was 18 when I saw it on TV, and my friend Tim and Tom were also 18. It was, I believe, no, it was played in Italian with subtitles. I believe that's how it was first aired on TV. And she says something in Italian like "Sodomy me."
Yeah.
And that was sort of like, we were pool players, so that was sort of like what we would say to each other. You know, we talked about every scene in the movie, and then, you know, Tom would turn to me and go, "Sodomy me," as a joke. I just believe that was, I believe that Lina wanted to show that that was her preference and that she was also asking for it. So it's quite aggressive. You know?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
He was initially the sexual aggressor,
Right.
And there's another flip, right?
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
She becomes, hey,
it's another
idiot.
Power. Yeah, it really it was interesting.
Don't know anything. Yeah, it could be making him feel lesser than, which is power.
Exactly.
or stupid.
Yeah, and it plays into such comedy as well. I mean, she was just a genius with this black comedy mixed with all this social consciousness, because I believe I already said, like, she loved those two art forms, those two types of genres, and I don't think anyone can combine the two better than her. I don't think I've seen it. Well, Mike, was there anything else you wanted to mention about this film?
It's a must-see, and don't waste whatever length the Guy Ritchie version is. Don't waste that minutes of your life. You'll never get them back.
I agree. Well said. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If you are currently listening to this now on the audio version of the podcast and have run out of episodes to listen to, head over to the YouTube channel where every single episode I've ever recorded is uploaded to. Go to youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. I want to also mention that I am on Patreon. Patreon is an exclusive membership for content creators and other kinds of artists, where we upload different bonus content for a monthly, very low price fee. My Patreon is based on a number of polls that I send out at the beginning of every single month. So you can vote on what you want to see. And therefore you will be very much a part of the decision making that goes into what I record on Patreon every single month. So go to patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. And lastly, if this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head right here to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos or when I go live. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.